Hey, how's it going? It's George with Eden Church. We're with you again in 1 Timothy. We're in chapter 5. We're kind of rolling along. And so, man, I'll tell you where we've been and what we do at Eden, we talk about the Spirit of God. We talk about God. He came in the flesh. And it was to release the spirit in our lives. It was to give us a brand new spirit. And so what I've been talking about in Timothy, I've been taking a real good look at the things that the Spirit of God has been doing and is doing in our lives, doing in this book in particular. And so because the thing is this, y'all can read the books. There is 1,001 different commentaries you can go find out and say Timothy was written in this year and at this time by this person at this place, and that you can read all that. What you need to hear what the Spirit of God is saying about this book. True. Okay, we need to hear the lessons that are coming forth from this. And so here in chapter 5, I think I kind of treat this as a point between the first part of the chapter, which is verses 1 through 16, and then the last part of the chapters 17 through the end. Okay, so the first part of this chapter in Timothy is basically it's talking about the duties of an elder, and it's talking about widows. And then what I want to look at is I want to look at the responsibility of the church in that. All right. And so to kind of bring some stuff forth. So what we're going to do, because I just been like to be getting going lately. I like to get going. We're going to get into 1 Timothy chapter 5. We're going to look at verse 1. We're going to read verses 1 and 2. It says, "Do not rebuke an elder, but exhort him as a father, the younger men as brothers, the elder women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters with complete purity." This should be some common sense, but I don't think common sense has been all that common lately. But it's the idea that treat people with respect. Duh. You know what I mean? Treat some people with respect. If there's a person there, the last church I was at, there was a person who I actually I liked him. Like it was a genuine like, okay, yeah. But we disagreed on one point about something, and I was fully willing to just kind of let it be because I had done the research on this. I had done and I had done the research on it. Obviously, I'm not going to get up and speak and preach about something if I hadn't looked at the research and looked at the old research, the new research, and that whole deal. And the point is that it was kind of like we weren't going to come to an agreement, but I treated him like a father. I treated him like I was like, like I talked to my dad one time, disrespectfully once. And that was when I was 17. And I'm 42. I talked to my dad that way one time when I was 17. Just once. All right, that's all I'm saying. That once is all it took. That's all I mean. So, nonetheless, now, have I disagreed with my dad since 17? Yes, quite honestly, I have. Okay? And there have been times when I was totally out of sorts and frustrated, and he gave me grace because I also, while I was aggravated and frustrated, I was telling him, I'm like, Dad, I'm sorry that I'm just, So he at least, so I wasn't really being disrespectful. I was just, I was letting him know I need a little space here to kind of navigate, but but at the same time, I know I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Like, so, 17, I only took one time. That's all I'm saying. But nonetheless, point is that, when you treat somebody like a father, that's not a father. When you treat someone like a mother, that's not a mother. Like brothers that are brothers. Like when you sit there, when sisters, you don't want to see harm come to your brother or sister. Yes, you want to push them and you want them to fall down because it's hilarious to you. But you don't want, if somebody else comes up saying something to you, you might have to put some hands on folk. You know what I'm saying? And so it's the idea that here it is, treat these people like family. You know, you see that elder and he's doing something wrong. You got to tell him he's doing something wrong, but you tell him like you would tell your father. And I had to tell my dad one time something, and he wasn't doing anything wrong. It was something that he needed to do. And I was like, hey, look, you know how you used to say X, Y, and Z to me? And then I kind of just, and so he then understood, yeah, you're right, I need to do that. But I didn't correct him. You know what I'm saying? I pointed out by using the life experience we had to show him so that he would make that decision he needed to make. Okay? That's how we ought to treat people. That's how we ought to, it's like I yelled at my mother once. And that was back when I was 10. One time. Just once. That's all. That's all that was needed. 42 years old. Just one time. Okay, so nonetheless, point is, didn't have to wait till Dad got home. She handled it herself. Just one time. That's all that was needed. Mainly because then when my dad still got home, all I needed was one time. That's all. But neither here nor there. Point is, treat these older women with respect. Treat them like a mom. Treat them. How would you tell? Your mom wrong on some stuff, but you can't go out and call her out like she your little best friend. I had to say that to my daughters a couple times. I was just like, they sit there and I was like, who are you talking to? Hold on a second. Why don't you take a second and think who you're talking to, and then try to start over? Yeah. Just once. That's all. But anyway, nonetheless, moving on, verse 3. Honor widows that are widows indeed. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, let them learn first to show piety at home and to repay their parents, for this is good and acceptable before God. Now, she who is a widow indeed and desolate trusts in God, and continues in supplications and prayers night and day. But she who lives in pleasure is dead while she is alive. And this thing command, that they may be blameless. But if any do not care for their own, especially for those who are in the household, they have denied the faith and are worse than unbelievers. Do not let a widow be counted unless she is over 60 years old, has been the wife of one man, is well attested in good works, if she has brought up children, has lodged strangers, has washed the saints' feet, has relieved the afflicted, and has diligently followed every good work. But refuse the younger widows. For when their sensual desires have drawn them away from Christ, they want to marry and bring judgment on themselves because they have cast off their first pledge. Besides that, they learn to be idle, and not only idle, but they wander around from house to house, but also gossips and busybodies, saying that they ought not. Therefore, I desire that the younger women marry, bear children, manage the house, and give no occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. For some have already turned aside after Satan. If any believing man or woman has widows, let those assist them. Do not let the church be charged, so that it may relieve those who are widows indeed. Woo! Okay, so here we go. I find it interesting. He's giving instruction just like he did about the office of the elders and all those things earlier in the book. He's given some other instruction, some practical instruction about how do you handle widows, Timothy. This is what I want you to do. Okay? Now, what's interesting is that Paul is telling Timothy, now, you need respect everybody. But now, let's go and talk to these widows. He says, honor widows. Honor these women who that they're left in this culture in this time. If a widow was a true widow, and she had no sons and she had no children, and that she had and the husband died, she had no income. Okay, so unless the husband was rich to first off, so that way she could like have money to continue what was going on. Unless that was the case, she was destitute. I mean, she literally had nothing. All right. Now, what's interesting about having nothing here is that, they're going to trust in God because God has to supply everything for them. And guess what? God sends the church along to supply those widows. Interesting. Because here's the deal. What kind of money did the church have if they could just take care of widows? Oh, but George, money and this and that and the other. Like I said, last time at the end of chapter 4, I was like, oh, we're going to talk about money this time, okay? But the thing is that the church basically, coming back into verse, I want to see the learn. Okay, yeah, here. Okay, so verse 16. It says, if any believing man or woman has widows, let those assist them. Do not let the church be charged. The church is supposed to be charged for widows? That's what the church is supposed to use its money for? The church is supposed to help widows and orphans? The church? Now, it says this, though. It says, now, if that woman who's a widow has a believing son or daughter, you tell them, take care of your family. So that way, the church is free to take care of the woman who has no one. Wow, that's interesting. I mean, that's just, it's one of those things that when people think about, giving to the church or giving to organizations and all this kind of stuff, and when we think about the church literally was started, and it was a place where if you were destitute and alone and a widow and you had no means, I mean, because you're going to be like 60, 70 something anyway, and you don't have means, I mean, in today's world, we're hiring 70 somethings, I mean, they want that knowledge, but in that day, they weren't, you're 70, your husband died, and your kids are dead, you got nothing coming, hey, come on into the body of Christ. The body of Christ will take care of you. People were giving their tithes still, their offerings, they were bringing to the church, and I'll explain more here in the second half of this chapter. I'll explain more, but they brought that to the church to take care of real needs, real issues, real things. That's where we ought to be in the church today. We ought to be able to take care of real things. We ought to have enough money, and enough, instead of paying for the brand new this or that, or paying for, we're going to have what we like to call, we're doing stuff that we're more like country clubs. And I have no problem with the church being massive. I got no problem with the church being huge. I mean, but the thing is, you can go to some of these small churches around. I consider a small church around 300 people, but that's just George, because I believe we should be big. So even though there's lots of churches smaller than that, we got churches that are smaller than that where they're more like where our members won't allow that. And we got people setting up little things all the way around that don't bless the community. They don't bless the people that are truly in need. I remember one church, the only thing they would do to help you was that if you were, if you needed help on a light bill or something like that, they'd give you $25. And I'm like, the church of that kind of size that it was, it should have just been able to pay the light bill. Now, it's not going to pay the light bill permanently. We're going to have to start talking about, okay, you call around for help, then you need to become a part of this church, and you need to start giving to this church because you need to bless somebody else. So I'm going to teach them about the laws of giving and receiving, the laws of sowing and reaping, and I'm going to teach them how this is how God works. This is the economy of God, and I'm telling you, you need to grow out of this situation. I'm going to show you how. But see, the problem is if you don't understand that in your church anyway, the only thing you're thinking about is constantly giving. And the thing is that a church should be a place where the giving and receiving takes place. It starts. Okay? The church should be a place where the laws of sowing and reaping. Once again, it says in Genesis, as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest will also remain. So the constant ideal of putting something in the ground and something coming back up to nourish me that I put back in the ground, that something comes up. Once again, the only thing I'm responsible for is putting it in the ground. The ground does the work after that. In other words, God does the work after that. Same thing with your money. Yeah, this all relates back to the widows. Because your church should be growing at such a rate, it should be growing financially at such a rate that it can take care of the people that need to be taken care of in your church. Yes, that's what should happen with church finances, with church money. We got to take care of these people. And that's what he's simply telling him. So these aren't poor people. These aren't people that the only thing, we barely got enough to get by. We barely got that. You barely have that because you barely say that, because that's what you say. Timothy had resources available to him, and he was also being told, now you've got to command these people who could take care of the moms, take care of them. We need to take care of the ones that have nobody.